Hello, everybody. Welcome into the Fantasy Pros Football Podcast. I'm Ryan Wormeli, joined as I am every Tuesday by Andrew Erickson. Maybe a Wednesday, depending on when you end up listening to this. At some point in the week, we are recording this on Tuesday morning, though. We are talking Week 6 running back buys and sells. This is part 1. There will be a part 2 dropping, both on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts on audio. That will be more focused on the wide receivers, quarterbacks, things like that. As a part of this episode, though, we will also be reacting to Monday Night Football. We had an upset here, Erickson, in Jacksonville, 31 for the Jags, 28 for the Chiefs. Very fun game. Very wacky, fun drive to end it from Trevor Lawrence. His game-winning drive capped off by falling and doing the old stumble rooski and somehow making it into the end zone. I don't know. That was wild. But he made some really good throws on that drive as well. Lawrence rushed for 2 touchdowns. He threw for another. Brian Thomas Jr. did have 80 receiving yards, which he has not done a lot this year, of course. Kareem Hunt rushed for a couple of touchdowns. Mahomes rushed for 1. He also threw for 1 and threw for over 300 yards. Tyquan Thornton, 90 yards receiving. Travis Kelce, 7 catches, 61 yards, and a touchdown. Those are some of the highlights. I guess I'll say Travis Hunter, too. 3 catches for 64 yards. He had the big 44-yarder. They talked about there was going to be some prizes for him this week. I'm not really sure what those were supposed to be, but he also had a bit of an injury issue at one point, kind of coming off the field limping a bit. So that's kind of the box score, Erickson. But what was your big fantasy takeaway from what was a very fun Monday night game?
Yeah, I think that there were a couple different angles to look at it. I know that we've talked about on this show before about Travis Etienne and how he could be a sell-high candidate with tougher matchups coming up. This was one of the tougher matchups, and Etienne didn't rip off the massive run like he has in past weeks. He didn't score any touchdowns despite having more red zone usage. So I still think that he is in that territory because the matchups for Jacksonville for their running backs do get a little bit tougher. And they also lost one of their, I believe it was their starting center. He got hurt in this game. So if the Jaguars offensive line is banged up, that could potentially hurt the run game in the future. So that's something to kind of pay attention to when it comes to the Jaguars backfield. Brashard Smith, they lied to us. He did not really have an I guess it depends on what you need by expand. I mean, he didn't play more. so that was like the number one thing. I believe he only played like 9 offensive snaps, and he actually had half the amount of touches that he did the week previously. He did have 3 catches on 3 targets, and he did actually have a red zone carry. He almost actually scored on the first drive, and as someone that bet the Brashard Smith anytime touchdown, I was very, very sad that he didn't find the end zone. And of course, Kareem Hunt's the guy that scores 2 touchdowns. As I alluded to on the Week 5 ranking show, whenever you play Kareem Hunt in your starting lineup, it is spray and pray. When it comes to Kareem Hunt, you're just hoping like the guy stumbles into the end zone, and that's exactly what he did. I think Pacheco looks okay, but his usage is just terrible. It's a 3-way committee. He doesn't get the high leverage opportunities like Kareem Hunt does. So he is like a middling RB3. I don't think you can outright cut him, but I know I had questions about Brashard Smith versus Isaiah Pacheco like heading into this week. Should I cut Pacheco for Brashard Smith? And I don't know if I feel like you can do that just because, Pacheco's going to see more opportunities every week than Brashard Smith. And this didn't really change my mind about that. So that's kind of a tough thing to kind of parse through. Travis Hunter, the usage is kind of all over the place, playing offense, playing defense. It doesn't seem like Jacksonville really knows what they're doing. They're trying to find unique ways to kind of get him involved, but he is very tough to trust on a week-to-week basis because it changes based on the game plan. Who's available for defense, who's available for offense. So the Brenton Strange injury could open up more opportunities for Travis Hunter to have a bigger role as a receiver, as maybe that security blanket for Trevor Lawrence. If Strange, I believe he has a hip injury. I don't know how long he is out for. That was another thing that you didn't mention. He did get hurt in this game.
Yeah.
And he's been a guy who's caught a lot of targets and a lot of passes from Trevor Lawrence. I think the Trevor Lawrence touchdown at the end of the game was kind of just a summarization of how Trevor Lawrence played. It was like bonehead play after bonehead play, and then somehow like making it into a positive play. I think Brian Thomas Jr. is also trending up. I think that this was a good game for him. Again, 4 for 80, 6 targets. It's positive. Like, that's what we want to see from Brian Thomas Jr.
Just quickly on the Chiefs backfield, I find it really interesting that if you look at the consensus rest of season rankings on FantasyPros.com, which you can navigate to from FantasyPros.com/rankings, Isaiah Pacheco is the highest rated Chiefs running back. He's at RB41. This is in half PPR scoring. Pacheco's RB41. Brashard Smith is RB50. Kareem Hunt is RB54. I feel like given the split, but the fact that it's Hunt that is scoring all the touchdowns and getting those opportunities, that Hunt should be higher. I mean, I guess as I'm talking you through, I'm not sure because I do think Pacheco looks good, and it wouldn't totally stun me if in the second half of the year, like Pacheco does take back over the backfield at some point if he continues to look good. But right now, it feels like if I had to start one of the three, it's definitely Kareem Hunt.
I think that there's hesitance for the rest of the season rankings because we know that Kareem Hunt's not the best running back on that team, right? So it's hard for me to, as a ranker, just be like, well, I'm going to push all my chips in on Kareem Hunt. Like, I think that doesn't seem like the smart move to make. Yes, his opportunities are a lot better, and maybe this is the wrong take. But I just think that Pacheco is the best running back. And we talked about this last week with Krosky-Merritt. The usage was not in his favor, but he looked like the best running back on the team. And what happened? He ended up getting the usage in his favor. Again, kind of under the radar where Isaiah Pacheco played a season high in snaps last night at 62%. So although Hunt's scoring all the touchdowns, like, you peek under the hood, you're like, oh, like Pacheco did play a lot. And I think that he's looked pretty good the last couple of weeks. It's just a matter of, hey, can they get this guy more touches, especially in the passing game, in the red zone? But yeah, Kareem Hunt's always going to kind of be a thorn in Pacheco's side.
Yeah, to be clear, I don't want to go all in on Kareem Hunt. I don't want to start any of these three right now. I'm just saying if I had to start one of them right now.
Title of the show, we're all in on Kareem Hunt.
Yeah,
let's go.
Please, editors, do not do that. Yeah, Pacheco's in that annoying range right now where it feels really hard to start him, but like I definitely don't want to drop him, which is a tough place to be, especially this time of year when buys are happening and guys are getting injured and kind of need your depth. So hopefully they start giving him better usage soon because I agree. I like just watching him. I think he's looked better as the season's gone on. Let's jump into our show. We always start this first part with some kind of macro level trade strategy advice from Erickson. This doesn't have to be about specific like buys and sells for players. It doesn't have to be about running backs. Just kind of in general, as we head into week 6 here, a month and a half into the season now, like into the bye weeks, like for real. And last week was the start of it. What are you thinking about 30,000 foot view in terms of making trades? By the way, just so everybody knows here at the start of the week, the two teams on bye, there's not a lot of them this week. It's just the Texans and the Vikings.
I think for me, the approach this week is to buy good players. And even if the situations seem kind of murky and a little bit unknown, if you look at, and this is something I took some time to do last week, I looked at 2024, the first 5 weeks, the first 4 weeks of 2024, and how players were doing, not necessarily in terms of fantasy points scored, but how they were in some of the efficiency marks, their PFF grades, their points above expectation, things like that. And I found that a lot of the players that played really well in the first 4 to 5 weeks of the season ended up, continuing to play well for the rest of the season. The only guys that really weren't those types of players were older players, where if an older player started out the season really, really hot, he was a player that you wanted to kind of get away from because it did start to tail off as the season progressed, which I don't think is like that outlandish or weird to kind of envision happening. That, yes, veteran players that are older, yes, this is when they're going to be most productive, when they're most healthy and they're at their freshest, whereas the season progresses, you don't necessarily see that from them. So this was the process play behind Krosky-Merritt last week, right? The usage was not there, but he checked off every single box when it came to, well, how good is this guy? Like he's smashing every single efficiency metric, number one rushing success rate. And then finally, the Commanders decided, hey, we're going to turn the ball over to Krosky-Merritt, and he was a massive hit. That being said as well, I think that you really want to try to pay attention to the injury stuff. And this is something that was a big miss for me last week, just the whole Trey Benson thing, where it seemed like he was okay, but maybe there was more rumbling. So that was a mistake that I made about giving out that. So that take aged like spoiled milk. Luckily, the Krosky-Merritt aged like fine wine. So we're 1-1 when it comes to the running back buys and sells. So hopefully at least you were pick up Michael Carter this past week. He was able to fill in if you did go after Trey Benson. So yeah, those are some of kind of my macro level stats. And when you're trying to buy players too, it's really hard to envision, okay, I'm going to buy this player and then flip him the next week. That's hard to do. It works in theory that you can flip players like stocks, but it doesn't always work that way. So whenever I'm looking to buy a player, I'm thinking in the back of my mind, I'm going to have this guy in he's going to be on my team for the rest of the season. And if I don't think that he is good, like that's a problem and I need to stop, versus I do believe in this player's talent. I do believe that the situation maybe can change for the better. Maybe they'll get better quarterback play, down the line. Maybe they've had a bunch of really tough matchups. Those are the players I want to be looking to trade for, and vice versa.
I'm sure the commenters in the audience only brought up Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt to you and never brought up Trey Benson. I'm sure they were very kind to you in that way. Is kind of the last question, then we'll jump into the running backs. Do you feel like would you? Because for some people, the idea of approaching players who have had their bye week is, I get a guy who's basically getting an extra week over anybody else who hasn't had their bye week yet. Like they are not going to miss again. But on the other hand, I wonder if these early buys, you're setting yourself up for a position where you get to the fantasy playoffs with these players and they haven't had a week off in, 2 months at this point because it was such an early bye week, and maybe they're more likely to get banged up. They don't get that kind of reset, refresh bye week, which is, it helps you recharge. So is that in the back of your mind at all if you were trading for any players who already just had their bye week this last week so early, or are you just more saying listen, they've got it out of the way, that's too much of an advantage, I want to go after those guys anyway?
Yeah, I think for me, it's just looking at the extra week of production and the less that you have to fill because, this guy already has bye week, I can start him rest of the way. So that's the way I'm thinking about it. And I think that that's also really captured in the value of these players. When you're making trades, I think that part of the trade negotiation is, so-and-so already had their bye week, so I need this much more in the deal, or you need to lower your asking price because this player hasn't had their bye week yet. So I think it just goes part of the trade negotiating, and I think it does depend on where you're at on your team. What's your record? So much of trades in certain players to buy and sell are very dependent on, what is your record? If you're a losing team, you can't take on guys that are going to be taking zeros for you, that are on bye weeks this week. Whereas if you're a team with a very strong record, you can play a little bit more bully ball, where you can kind of dictate trades a little bit more in your favor. And no, I'll take this player on a bye week with a bad matchup in week 6 or a bye week in week 7. I can take on a player that might score 0 points this week and then miss next week because of a bye week because I'm 5-1 or I'm 6-0, whatever my record is. So I think that's another thing to also look at when you're making some of these deals.
We're launching, I don't know if it's actually launched yet, but if not, it's coming soon, a new feature at FantasyPros called Trade Persuade, where not that we're trying to trick people into making terrible trades, but where sometimes when you're trying to negotiate a trade, stuff like that isn't noticed by both parties, or you forget to bring it up, and it's kind of a way to help make the case of hey, this is it's kind of like a cliche, right? This trade helps you more than it helps me, or whatever. In trying to swindle somebody, Trade Persuade will kind of actually show here is the breakdown of why this actually genuinely is mutually beneficial for everyone, and stuff a bye week's already happened can go into that, and negotiating is a skill, and I don't say negotiating as a way of getting one up on somebody else. It's just negotiating in terms of helping both parties see that there's mutual value here. So hopefully that feature helps with that, and things bye weeks can get taken into consideration there. Let's jump into the running backs to buy here, Erickson. Who's number 1 for you?
I'm going to go with Breece Hall, running back for the New York Jets. We saw Breece Hall play his first game in totality without Braylon Allen in the lineup. He played 62% of the snaps. Isaiah Davis filled in as the RB2, played 40% of the snaps. Now, Hall did get banged up a little bit in this game against Dallas. He also lost a fumble at the end of the first half, but he started in the second half. So I'm always going to be whenever there's a guy that potentially has an injury, I'm going to be very, very clear, don't make any trades until we get the Wednesday injury report, because I refuse to be Trey Benson again. So just keep that in mind. He went back in the game, so I'm assuming that he is fine, but just keep an eye on the Wednesday injury report as we get more information. That being said, the touches were still heavily in favor of Breece Hall. He outtouched Davis 18-4. And I think a key point of his usage was he did see the lone goal line carry from the 3-yard line. Again, Hall hasn't scored yet this season, but usually those carries go to Braylon Allen. That was not the case. So Isaiah Davis isn't taking over that Braylon Allen role. It's now Breece Hall has goal line opportunities. Now, how great is that when you're an 0-5 Jets team? Not that great, but still we'll take it because it is increasing at least the floor with Breece Hall, that he's not being taken out of the backfield when the Jets get in close to score. So again, bell cow usage, over 100 plus yards from scrimmage. He's been really efficient this year. I think he, Garrett Wilson, Justin Fields, when they've had their moments on offense, they've been the reason why the Jets have been able to move the ball effectively at times against some of these weaker defenses. And I really want to point out the schedule here with the Jets. This week, it's London with the Broncos. Not great. But after that, it's the Panthers and Bengals, which are just two monster matchups for Breece Hall. So I think that he is a good buy low running back right now. People are obviously down on the Jets, rightfully so. They're 0-5, but a couple good matchups coming up. If you lost Omari and Hampton, Breece Hall might be a guy to go after.
If you look at the rushing leaders in the NFL, Breece Hall, despite having 2 games with under 30 yards, in weeks 2 and 3, despite those dragging him down through the first 5 weeks, he is 7th in the NFL in rushing yards. And in the top 20 of that leaderboard, he is the only player without a rushing touchdown. So that would, suggest, I mean, you probably could have guessed it anyway, right? But that would, help suggest that he is likely to start getting more of those opportunities. Like, we know Braylon Allen is out for a long time, and that they want those to go to Hall. I don't know how good the Jets' offense is going to be over the course of the season and providing those opportunities in general, but obviously he's going to get more than 0 barring some kind of catastrophe. And the rushing production's been there. That also doesn't include the receiving yards. That's strictly rushing yards. The receiving, he's had at least 30 yards in 4 out of 5 games, and he has multiple catches in every game. And particularly the last 3 games alone, he has 13 total receptions and over 100 receiving yards across the last 3 games. So the yardage production feels very clear is going to be there, moving forward. And if the touchdowns go up, he's going to be really valuable relative to, like, right now he's RB 13. If the touchdowns start coming with the yardage he's giving you, that is going to end up being too low.
Yeah. So the touchdowns, it maybe is still a stretch to assume that they will start to come because he obviously plays on a bad team.
Well, they're going to come more than 0, right? Like it might not be like a league leading rushing touchdown total. He's not going to be like the new Jonathan Taylor who has 6 already, but I mean, it's going to be more than 0.
I feel strongly he'll probably score against the Panthers or Bengals.
Yeah.
That'll probably happen.
Yeah, I would think so. All right, so he's RB 13. Like I said, that's in half PPR scoring. Your other running back to buy is actually ranked even higher. He's up at RB 11.
Yeah, we're buying the expensive running backs this time around, not going after the cheap guys like last week. Derrick Henry. You know Derrick Henry, right, Worm? Running back for the Baltimore Ravens.
I've heard of him.
Now, this is a trade that you don't make if you need Derrick Henry right now. This would not be a trade as a 1-5 manager, 0-6. Hey, should I trade for Derrick Henry? That's probably not the case because I'm not expecting Lamar Jackson to play in this matchup in week 6 against the Los Angeles Rams. That's not a great matchup anyway for running backs. So then the Ravens go on bye in week 7. That's when you're making this trade because after the bye week, you're assuming that Lamar Jackson will come back to the starting lineup. You'll see the Ravens offense get back up to potential of high scoring. I don't know where the defense is going to be. It's probably not going to be fixed anytime soon, but that's okay. If their defense is bad, giving up points, then you're going to see this Ravens offense have to score a lot of points. So I like going after Derrick Henry as a buy low with the vibes around the Ravens so bad. Everyone's injured. No one's ever coming back, which isn't necessarily the exact case. And when you look at who they play after their bye week, it's the Bears and the Miami Dolphins. Just 2 absolute smash spots for a guy like Derrick Henry. So the Ravens could be faced at what? After, if they lose against the Rams this week, they'll be 1-5, right, Worm?
Yes.
So they're going to need to start to get some wins to get back into the AFC North discussion. That's going to come after the bye week when they have some easier matchups, especially for Derrick Henry. So if you have a strong record, I think going after Derrick Henry on the cheap is a way to approach it.
So the thing with Henry that I struggle with is I wonder, yes, when Lamar comes back, the offense will clearly be much better. I wonder if the defense, if it's really not fixable given the injuries, and if that's the case, if that it will still prevent Derrick Henry from having these big games because they're going to be in shootouts, because even if the offense is playing really well, like if the defense is the worst in football, like they're still going to be behind in games even with Lamar back. And I wonder if Lamar isn't this like Band-Aid for Derrick Henry's production in the way that fixing the defense would be, and fixing the defense is obviously much less likely than, Lamar coming back as good as he was.
I think those are good points to bring up. I just think that Lamar is the tide that lifts all boats. And
he is for sure that.
So that's the way I see it. And if anything, how do you protect again, I think to play devil's advocate, well, what if the Ravens decide, well, we need to feed Derrick Henry 25 carries to keep our defense off the field? right? Like, how do we protect our defense? We run the ball. We don't necessarily need to score these super explosive plays. Although you could, again, making the other argument is Derrick Henry, he's most productive by when he rips off like those 80-yard touchdowns, like when he's ripping off explosive versus like grinding out yardage. That's usually not where he has.
He's had multiple games this season under 2.5 yards per carry. Yes. I mean, the efficiency, his season is really boosted by how much he dominated Buffalo in week 1. And he has really not looked himself since then. And Lamar played for 2 3/4 of those 4 games. And Derrick Henry felt like he wasn't looking like himself and was getting stuffed at the line a lot. Like, the offensive line is not good. I don't know. I was getting so angry, not at the Ravens losing this weekend, because obviously, like, you expect it with what that injury report looked like. I was telling everybody about the mortgage on Houston. But I was getting so angry at people who were like talking about, like, they were almost surprised at how much the Ravens were bad. And I was like, I have been fighting for Lamar Jackson in these like debates for years. Like, he covers up so much more than he gets credit for. Everybody looks like, oh, like, look at all these Pro Bowlers they have. Like the MVP debate last year. I talked about this on Friday too. So we don't need to dive into it again, but I'm like Lamar covers up way more than he is boosted by his teammates and scheme and all that. Like, he is very, very special as a quarterback, and he erases mistakes from receivers, mistakes from offensive linemen, mistakes from the defense. He is a mistake eraser. Todd Monken calls him that, actually. And yeah, so he could be kind of this, like you said, the rising tide that lifts all boats and kind of covers up all these other warts and makes Henry look good again. But I do worry about the defense because the Ravens, like, for whatever reason, they do not. If they are down, Justice Hill is on the field. It's not Derrick Henry. And I just worry that the defense will keep them in that spot, even with Lamar, back and theoretically playing better. The other thing, too, is I don't know, like, hamstrings are tricky. And if the Ravens are, like, very much out of it because they keep losing through all these injuries, and Lamar is like not 100% back. He's had injuries linger in the past where they've kind of gone on longer than the team was talking about. I'm just not 100%. He could rush back this weekend, right, if they feel really desperate. I'm not saying that there's no way he's back after the bye, but like, it wouldn't shock me if he's not all the way back, or if he is back, if he's still really limited mobily, and it really hurts the offense. So I'm just kind of throwing that out there as well.
Yeah, I mean, I would be very surprised if he plays. I mean, they have a week 7 bye week. That, to your point, this makes no sense to put him out there if he's less than 100%. It's a non-conference game. It's against an NFC opponent. So in the grand scheme of things, if they really lose against the Rams, does it really make that much of a difference? Probably. I mean, even if Lamar plays this game, they could lose, right? The Rams are one of the better teams in the NFL. So I would not.
The Rams are going to score 35 points in this game.
So
it's just going to happen. I promise.
At this point, the Ravens just need to win the AFC North, and it's not like the Bengals or Browns are these amazing teams that are going to be. Again, the Ravens still have almost all their divisional matchups. They're already 1-0 in the division. They beat the Browns already. So I still think, even at 1-5, that they're not out of this entirely. And all you got to do is get to the dance. And I think that they can make noise if they have, like you said, they have Lamar Jackson. Who cares what the defense is like? As long as you got Lamar, you got a shot.
Today's show is brought to you by our new presenting sponsor, Hard Rock Bet. We know Tuesdays are for scouting the waiver wire. Once you're done finding your diamond in the rough, head on over to Hard Rock Bet. See what their odds are to score another touchdown. See what their yardage total over is on Hard Rock Bet. You don't have to wait for week 6 to kick off to get in on the action. There's always something to bet on. If you haven't tried your first bet on Hard Rock Bet yet, there's still time for you to get $150 in bonus bets if you win. Just place a $5 bet, and if it hits, you get not only your winnings, but $150 in extra bonus bets. There's new promos every day. So if you're listening to this later, just open the app and check out what you've got on any day of the week. Download the Hard Rock Bet app and make your first deposit. All right, Erickson, who's your first running back to sell?
Going to sell New Orleans Saints running back Alvin Kamara. This past week was kind of a smash spot for him against the lonely New York Giants, one of the worst run defenses in the NFL. And I mean, Kamara did not do that much. So that really makes me concerned about what his ceiling is on a week-to-week basis playing in the Saints offense. This is the one game that the Saints were favored in, and a game that they won at home against a bad defense, against the run game, and Kamara did not hit whatsoever. His receiving usage has been really spotty throughout the year. Spencer Rattler is a mobile quarterback, so he doesn't always check the ball down to his running back. Sometimes he just takes off and runs with his legs. So it's been really up and down. This past week, it was okay. He did see a decent amount of usage as a receiver, but there are some games this year where he's kind of been non-existent as a receiver. So that concerns me. Kendre Miller is getting more involved. Kendre Miller had more carries than Kamara in this past matchup, 10 carries for 41 yards. He also led the carry, Miller also had 39% of the snaps to Kamara's 56%. On the season, efficiency-wise, Kamara is PFF's 14th lowest graded running back. Miller is the 4th highest graded running back for the Saints this year. So looking at, okay, again, these aren't the be-all, end-all stats, but it's trying to capture how efficient player is breaking tackles and yards after contact. Kendre Miller's been better than Alvin Kamara. I don't think that's like too surprising. Kamara is an older running back. He's not really known for being the super efficient runner, especially throughout the last couple of years. He's known as that
I think it might be
back.
surprising how big that disparity is. I don't think it's surprising that Miller's looked better, but that's a pretty wide gap.
Yeah, it's a pretty wide gap, and I think it's good to compare them side by side because they are running behind the same offensive line. So they're, put in similar situations, and Kendre Miller has been the more efficient rusher. So I don't think that his opportunities are going to be going away because he's playing well. He's received positive coach speak. So Kendre Miller is a player that's starting to eat into Kamara's workload. And then you have this other third factor with Taysom Hill coming back to the lineup. Taysom Hill had 6 carries in his first game back. So that is a concern. Every opportunity that Taysom Hill is getting, so he touched the ball on 7 of his 9 offensive snaps, one of which came at the Giants' 12-yard line. So again, just more players that are eating into what could go to Kamara, whether it's touchdowns, whether it's receptions, whether it's carries. And then he plays for the Saints offense. Like, we know that the ceiling on this team is not really high anyway. So for me, I'm trying to sell Kamara. I think at this point, you're hoping he gets traded. I think that's the ideal outcome. If you have Kamara on your team, he goes to a contender that needs a running back upgrade. We talked about the Chiefs earlier. Maybe they're a team that makes a play for Kamara. But besides that, if he's on the Saints team, I just don't see a scenario where I trade away Kamara and I think, man, that was the biggest mistake I made, trading away Alvin Kamara on the Saints, who aren't going to win a lot of games. He's in now potentially a 3-headed committee with Taysom Hill now added into the fold. So I'm definitely trying to get out of Kamara.
He's not going to totally bottom out for you, right? Like, the usage is strong enough that he's not going to have like an RB 65 type of a week. But yeah, like the ceiling, you could have argued against the ceiling before the season, just knowing what the Saints offense would look like in terms of the touchdown scoring opportunity. He has 1 touchdown this season, and it came in week 1. He has not scored in the last month. And that's including like receiving and rushing touchdowns. He has not scored any, dating back to week 1. So yeah, like I'm with you on the ceiling here. What do you think you can get for somebody like him right now who is, older? He's 30, and people tend to not be that interested in running backs who are 30. He's on what is perceived to be like maybe the worst offensive football, or at least one of the worst. He hasn't been that good. He has a young running back that he's sharing the backfield with. Like, what do you think you could actually get for him right now, just based on the name value?
Could you get Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, or is the window closed shut after this past week?
They're ranked 2 spots apart in ECR for rest of season rankings. So if people are going by that, then maybe there's an opportunity. I would imagine a lot of people, like, we always talk about this, like kind of the emotional side of trades. Like, if you were the guy who got Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt in draft when there was so much hype and, it was Bill season and just everybody's so excited. If you got him and now you just saw what he did this last week, like, you're not trading him for an aging veteran who's looked bad. Like, even if you agreed with the ranking and said I actually have Kamara higher rest of season, it's hard to pull the trigger there.
I would take the Bill side. So that's one of the reasons why I talked about him last week. I'm trying to think of other potential names. I'm looking at my rest of season rankings to get an idea of like where I have him ranked with the other running backs. Because where is he in the rest of season ranking? He's got to be like the low end RB2 rank. Or maybe what you would do is
I think he's RB22. I just clicked off it, but I believe he's RB22.
So, look, he's not a name we're bringing up specifically here, but every single week the universe is trying to make Travion Henderson a thing. I think that's what
I think you could do, because people who have Travion Henderson would want are kind of ready to move on. So that one I think is like doable.
Even though every single week, besides Travion Henderson's on-field performance, it gives you a reason to buy said player. Antonio Gibson's going to miss the rest of the year. Ramondre Stevenson
what about?
I don't know what kind of dirt he has on Mike Vrabel to keep him in the game.
What What about some of, like, if you look at the flex rest of season rankings, what about some of the receivers? Like, if you need a receiver, Xavier Worthy, DK Metcalf, Stephon Diggs, Michael Pittman Jr., Quentin Johnston. Do those sound like the right names for a trade with Kamara?
I think Diggs would be a good move to make, especially for a running back needy team. Maybe you can't really move Kamara for a running back straight up. Maybe it has to be for a flex option or a wide receiver, like you mentioned. And I think that he would be an interesting player to go after. Diggs has looked really good the last 2 weeks. He's really popped off. He hasn't scored over those 2 weeks, even though the Patriots are trying to get him into the end zone. They were trying desperately to get him in the end zone against Buffalo. It just didn't end up working out. But that would be another option. I think Kamara, you got to go to a manager that is running back needy. Find the player that lost O'Marion Hampton. They're looking, because it's like, if I'm looking at Hassan Haskins or Alvin Kamara, I'd rather have Kamara than Hassan Haskins at this point, especially behind the Chargers' offensive line that is just decimated by injuries. So that's a good move or way to approach moving Kamara, who, again, we talked about it, the stock isn't high on him. He's not really a sell high per se, but he does have some value, and with bye weeks, people might need a running back.
In fantasy sports, flexibility is everything, especially when you're managing injuries, bye weeks, or tough matchups. Your finances deserve the same level of control, and that's exactly what Klarna delivers. Klarna is your smarter, everyday spending partner. Inside the app, you can track purchases, compare prices, find deals, earn cash back, and choose to pay now or later with no interest when payments are made on time. It's the kind of tool that helps you stretch your money further and make every purchase count. This isn't about spending more, it's about spending wisely. Klarna fits seamlessly into how you already shop, whether you're picking up groceries, upgrading tech, or even just keeping an eye on your budget. Klarna gives you the financial flexibility to shop smart and stay in control, just like a good roster move. Download the Klarna app or head to Klarna.com to learn more. CA resident loans made or arranged pursuant to a California finance law license, NMLS number 1353190. Klarna balance account required. Klarna may get a commission. Limitations, terms, and conditions apply. Give me your other running back to sell.
My other running back is David Montgomery. This comes after he had a big game against the Cincinnati Bengals. We talked about this on the Betting Pros show. Terrell Furman actually brought it up. This was like a homecoming game for David Montgomery, who is a Cincinnati born and raised. His sister was at this game, got to see him play for the first time. And I think that Dan Campbell really bought into this and hey, let's get David Montgomery more carries. He threw a touchdown in this game. That's not part of his natural role on the Detroit Lions. So given it was the Cincinnati, this was just a smash spot for David Montgomery. So in the Beyond the Waiver Wire article, I was writing about David Montgomery, talking about after the Ravens game. I thought that he was a sell high candidate after that game. But if you didn't sell high him after that monster game on primetime, the Bengals game was the spot. Wait till he plays the Bengals, multiple touchdowns, throwing one, rushing for a touchdown, had more carries than Jahmyr Gibbs. I think this is the time for you to sell high on David Montgomery, who we still know is a part-time running back, and the Lions have a much tougher matchup this week. They're on the road against the Chiefs. That is a much tougher spot for this Lions offense, especially against the Chiefs' run defense that slowed down Travis Etienne on Monday Night Football. So David Montgomery for me would be a sell high.
Yeah, I agree. I don't really honestly have too much to add on this one or push back on. I just think he makes a lot of sense. As I actually did sell him in a league
What'd you get?
Very recently. It's a dynasty league, so it's kind of hard to say. It was a in this league, we have a ton of great running backs. I mean, at the time, obviously, O'Marion Hampton's gotten hurt now, but we had Hampton, Bijan, James Cook, Aaron Jones, it's come back at some point. There's another running back I'm forgetting, but we obviously had a lot of really good running backs that we were never going to start David Montgomery over. He was at best our RB5, and we have no young receivers, so we traded him for Luther Burden. Again, it's a dynasty league, and we have a lot of depth there. So I'm not saying that's the type of trade you should make in a redraft league if you have David Montgomery, but the point is being willing to sell. I'm very on board with that.
Now, one other guy we didn't mention as a player to maybe buy with either Kamara or Montgomery, and this is a lot less about the longevity of his value, but if you need wins right now, Rachaad White, is he a player that, hey, he's got the ceiling right now because he's the guy right now for the Buccaneers. Bucky Irving, we've seen kind of mixed reports about. It seems like they said he has a shoulder injury now too. So he's all sorts of banged up. So we don't know when he's going to return. And in the meantime, we know that Rachaad White he's been an RB1 in the past. The Buccaneers are a fun offense. Their defense is injured all in their secondary. I mean, it's the same thing with the Bucs. Their secondary is terrible. They're a pass funnel defense. They're playing a bunch of shootouts.
What about if you're a team that isn't like, I don't need to win right away because his player's on bye and he's coming off of a bad game? But what about Woody Marks? There was so much excitement for him coming off of that week 4 game. Did not follow it up in week 5. If you're like, listen, I don't care about the bye week this week. I have enough depth, or I'm 5-0 or whatever. Would you trade one of those veterans for just the upside swing on Woody Marks, even though he's coming off a bad game?
I don't think so. Woody Marks, to me, I think he's more of a hold because the Texans offensive line is not changing, right? That's still a big issue for him when it comes to a run blocking perspective. I don't think Nick Chubb is going to be just totally supplanted. I think he's going to remain involved. Even in Woody Marks' breakout game in week 4, Chubb was still kind of involved. So I think we take more of a Chubb injury. And then there's always that, I don't think Joe Mix is coming back, but there's always like a chance that maybe he does come back at some point, which kind of muddles things up a little bit more. So I think for the Texans right now, you're kind of I would just hold those players. Like you said, they're also on a bye this week.
Yeah. All right, let's go to our running back trios here. Buy, sell, or hold. I've got 3 trios for you. First one, buy, sell, or hold. Javonte Williams, Kyren Williams, Breece Hall, who we already talked about a bit. Again, buy, sell, or hold. Javonte Williams, Kyren Williams, Breece Hall.
So for me, I'm going to buy Breece Hall because we already talked about that, so I'm not going to change my stance here. Although I could see Breece Hall being a hold and then Javonte Williams being the buy. I just love what I've seen from Javonte Williams. I think that he's all the way back. People forget, but he's only 25 years old. This isn't some like old dusty running back. It's a running back that was really productive when he was young, had this devastating injury, and it's just taken him a long time to get back to where he is now. And that's just fully all the way back. He is the Dallas Cowboys full-blown bell cow. Even playing behind patchwork offensive line pieces, him, Dak Prescott, this Cowboys offense has somehow been able to function at a high level despite missing so many pieces. And those pieces are going to come back. A lot of these injuries are not season-ending, so they're going to get offensive line help back in future games. They're going to get Lamb back in future games. So Javonte Williams, I think that I'm all in on in terms of rest of season. And I think he's definitely one of the biggest hits of the 2025 season. We start talking about running backs who grade well efficiency-wise, and Javonte across the board is like a top 10 efficiency monster this season. So I don't think that this is going to fizzle out. I think that he is here to stay. So he would be the guy to buy, hold. And then by default, I would guess I would put Kyren Williams on the sell high. I think that the pass game numbers that he had on Thursday night are just absolutely insane from what we've seen from Kyren Williams. I don't think he's ever had that much. I think he had 10 targets. Just absolute bonkers game for Kyren Williams. But the fumbling again. Like, this doesn't stop with Kyren Williams. Now, Blake Corum also fumbled, although I think that technically in the box score, it was credited as a Matthew Stafford fumble. But it's pretty clear, like, who fumbled the ball, whose fault it was on the play. So it's not really about Blake Corum anymore. They have been more open to using Blake Corum a little bit more. And I do think just, like, when you're trying to pick hairs between, like, these types of 3 players, I think that Corum is the biggest threat to these 3 running backs, right? When you're just looking at who's behind them. Jaden Blue, Miles Sanders, not really afraid of those guys. Breece Hall, we already talked about. Braylon Allen's on injured reserve. And then I think Blake Corum, again, I don't think he's supplanting Kyren Williams. I think Kyren Williams is the RB1 for the Rams. But Corum is the best backup of these 3 that we're talking about. So I think that he would probably be the sell, especially after a very spiked week. 2 touchdowns, receiving usage off the charts. I don't think that's necessarily something that sustains all year long when you have guys like Puka Nacua and Devontae Adams.
Next trio, J.K. Dobbins, Alvin Kamara, who we also already talked about, and Chuba Hubbard, who I wanted to include because obviously he didn't play this week, but we just saw this awesome game from Rico Dowdle. I wondered if that kind of impacted how you're viewing Hubbard, even though he wasn't actually on the field in that one. So Dobbins, Kamara, and Hubbard, buy, sell, or hold.
So Kamara will remain my sell here. I think Dobbins would probably be the best hold of the players. Maybe he would be a sell high type of player just because we know his injury track record, and eventually you'd think that maybe they do try to get RJ Harvey a little bit more involved as the season progresses. But if you just have J.K. Dobbins and you just play him every week and, if he gets hurt at some point, so be it. I don't hate that idea either, just because to ride the wave, it's sometimes tough to project like when exactly these running backs go down. It's not like we're all predicting, this is going to be the week Bucky Irving gets hurt. It's hard to predict that sometimes, but I would not be surprised if Dobbins does type of fizzle out at some point. But right now, I think that you can kind of just keep him playing in your lineup. And then Chuba Hubbard, for me, I was kind of lukewarm on him during draft season. I thought that Rico Dowdle could have a bigger role in this offense. And when you rush for 200 yards in a game, you can't just, oh yeah, you're going back to the bench. I don't think that's going to happen. So I think Chuba Hubbard, even as I sell low, I think he would be the guy that I think you can probably try to package away, just because I don't think that, yes, he'll go back to the RB1 spot for the Carolina Panthers, but is it as obvious of he's the number one, Rico Dowdle's number two? It's probably more of a 1A, 1B type of situation rest of season.
Last trio here: Tony Pollard, DeAndre Swift, Zach Charbonnet. Buy, sell, or hold. Again, Pollard, Swift, and Charbonnet.
Can I sell all of these guys? Is that an option? Can I sell everybody? Not. Who do I want to buy from these? I guess I'll buy Zach Charbonnet just because he's one Kenneth Walker injury away from being an RB1. So I will buy Charbonnet. He's also probably the cheapest because he has the RB2 designation, even though he outsnaps Kenneth Walker. I just die at the box scores for the Seahawks running backs. You see Ken Walker rips off like 8 yards a carry. Then you see Zach Charbonnet, same amount of carries, 3 yards a carry, scores touchdowns. Just so tilting, but it is what it is. And Charbonnet, again, kind of like at a cream hunt way, just finds his way into the end zone. And Seattle's been very effective running the football this year. So I'll buy Zach Charbonnet because he's cheap, and I have Ken Walker on a bunch of teams. I'm selling Tony Pollard and DeAndre Swift. I'm not picking a hold because I don't want either of these guys on my team. So I'm selling both of them.
You just consistently break through. The whole point is that this is a difficult decision, and you just go, I choose not to make the decision.
I guess I would hold Swift because he already had his bye week. And Kyle Monangai, as much as I'd like to be a believer, he has also been really inefficient this year just because the Bears' run game has been inefficient this year. I would expect Ben Johnson to have something else cooked up coming out of their bye week. So maybe we get a little bit of a bump for Swift, and then you sell high on him. Whereas Pollard, I think, is trending in the wrong direction. I think we're going to see more of Tajay Spears this week. They've already talked about that. Callahan talked about how, yes, it was his first game back, so we're going to see Tajay Spears get more involved. And actually on the broadcast, they mentioned that Cam Ward, when he was talking about Tajay Spears coming back, he mentioned to the production team, Superman's back, when talking about Tajay Spears. So Cam Ward's a big fan of Tajay Spears, and I think that you're going to see more of a split backfield upcoming in Week 6.
You're like Lucille Bluth in Arrested Development when I ask some of these, and you're just like, I don't understand the question, and I won't respond to it. you refuse to play the game. Don't forget about our weekly trade live stream on our YouTube channel, where you can come and ask your specific fantasy trade questions. We'll be with you every Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern. For those listening on the podcast, just go to youtube.com/fantasypros, subscribe, and click the bell to be notified of all of our weekly live streams. Be sure to check out part 2 when it drops, either on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts on audio. That'll be, like I said, diving into wide receivers and then a bit of quarterback and tight end talk as well. For Erickson, I'm Ryan Wormeli. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time.